All right. Welcome to the February 5th, 2018 meeting of the Arlington Redevelopment Board, recorded by ACMi. First on the agenda this evening is a continued public hearing for a special permit docket 2890 30 Park Ave. I know the proponents are here, so please come up, reintroduce yourselves, and bring us up to speed on where things stand.
Okay. Robert Anesi for the petitioner. This is Chris Ferrio. We told you a lot about him last time in terms of his experience, and he's here again this evening. Very anxious, I might say, to get started. Okay, I think he's got a lot of things lined up at this point. We were asked last time to do a few things, and we've tried to accomplish those objectives. One was to come up with a plan that basically showed the parking, and we've done that for you, okay? As I believe you may recall, we need 133 parking spaces. Pardon me, but I've had a cold for 2.5 weeks. We do not have 133 parking spaces. We, in fact, have 122. What we did last time is we introduced a letter from Arlington Coal and Lumber, which is right across the street, and that letter indicated that we would have the ability to park at Arlington Coal and Lumber after 5 o'clock Monday through Friday, and essentially during the heavy hours when we would have people attending Gold's Gym. As you know, the baseball operation is going to have different hours from Gold's Gym, and the baseball operation is going to be dealing with youngsters, okay, 14 and under, and older kids 15 to 18 to high school age. They essentially are going to be dropped off by their parents at the facility, so there'll be no parking requirements for those vehicles dropping those individuals off. What we've shown on the plan that we've submitted, which you have, we've shown you what the employee parking would be, and the employee parking would be, I believe, 9 spaces. We have at least 9 spaces from across the street from Arlington Coal and Lumber. So that would leave 113 spaces that would be available for customers and clients of both the baseball operation and the Gold's Gym. So if you take the 9 spaces across the street and you add those to what we do have, we have enough parking spaces at that point. What we did argue in the submission we gave to the board is we argued for a reduction of 25% parking. We also made the argument that we have shared parking, which we do, and we also made the argument that in fact we have staggered parking, which we do as well. Now, I was asked to check with the building inspector with respect to the possibility of having a crosswalk down at the end of Park Street Extension. And Mr. Byrne indicated to me that that really would not be something that could be accomplished, that it simply wasn't in the cards to have something like that happen. I also asked him about signage, and he said, you know, based upon the kind of a limited activity you're going to have coming from Arlington Coal and Lumber across to the facility, I really don't think that you need signage. So I suggested to him that what I then would probably want to do is draft up a communication to be given to all of the clients of Gold's Gym and all of the clients of the baseball operation, which I have done, which I believe that you have, Jenny, and hopefully the members do have as well. And that essentially is a strong encouragement to the participants to in fact use other modes of transportation aside from driving. We have indicated on the plan where the bicycle parking could be. We offered voluntarily to convert a tan room at the facility into a bicycle parking arrangement as well. I did go online. I checked the up parking information on Google, and we do have some ideas in terms of what we might want to try to do in terms of how we handle the parking in the former tanning salon, and the parking that we are already offering within the lobby of Gold's Gym. Plus, there's parking, as you can see on the plan, outside of the facility as well. So I think we've tried to address a lot of the issues that came up last time. I do know there was some question about benches and the like, and I think Carl Tamayan had addressed that in terms of those items being damaged. We're certainly open to whatever suggestions the members of the board may have with respect to landscaping, with respect to that kind of thing we might be able to do on the site. I believe that we have probably gone as far as we can in terms of coming up with what we need to for the purpose of trying to have the proposal approved. I will say again, I think this is really terribly beneficial to the town. You're going to have participants from the town itself, from Little League, from the Babe Ruth League, from the high school, who are all going to be participating in the facilities. As you also know, the facilities are not just limited to baseball. We can convert the facilities to lacrosse or other type operations as well. But none of that is going to increase the parking requirements that we have as far as the site is concerned. So we're asking, again, pardon me, we're asking that the board consider our application. My supplemental filing spells out who is parking where, who is traveling to and from the site, okay? And as you can see, the trips to the site and from the site from others occupying the site are extremely limited, okay? So I don't think that there's going to be a problem with respect to a conflict in that regard. So we're asking that the board approve our petition under environmental design review. And if you have any questions for myself, Chris, Gold's Gym, or Carl Tamayan, we're all here to respond.
Good. Thanks. Andy, go ahead.
Seems like a great use, and that's what we said the last time, but there were just some questions that came out of the last meeting. Plan for the bike path access. I think actually Andrew brought that one up. It's
Yeah.
pretty
Carl?
Whatever the board thinks would be reasonable, and Gold's Gym's willing to undertake. I mean, again, in the past, we had that area, an entryway cleaner than it is now, with benches and bike racks, and those benches and bike racks ended up on the streets being destroyed, and I think one was even hit by a car.
Yeah, I think what I said last time, I was less concerned with benches and bike racks being put in there than the area just being maintained and kept up to allow for easy access between the bike path and Gold's Gym. That's really the only requirement I'd add in as a special condition.
The tenant can maintain that if that's what the board
Yeah.
elects to impose.
Yeah.
maintain clean access, or
Maintain.
it's like an open fence now, right?
Yeah.
Can it be an open gate or something that's safe?
We're open to suggestions.
It looks like you had to break through,
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like somebody did.
so you don't feel like a criminal when you're going
Yeah,
through it.
I haven't biked off the path into the parking lot there in a long time, but my recollection is it's not very welcoming.
I think what they're saying is, right now, it's a fence that's broken apart.
Right.
If we were just to go in and just sort of repair where the fence is there now and leave an opening, that's it.
So basically, you can look for fence posts
Yeah.
Yeah.
to define the
And
entrance.
So we clear demarcation of that for
the
access.
chain link fence back to the post, it's sort of laid inside, it's sort of broken apart. If it looks a little better, then it looks like, oh, okay, it's meant to be an opening there, not
That's fine.
a snowplow came
Again,
in.
we can put fence posts in to define the entrance.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
probably want those
The
people.
landlord says we can do it, so we'll do it.
You want
All
those
right.
people coming to your facility. I mean, Millbrook buffer dumpsters in particular, to preserve the Millbrook buffer zone, and particularly to remove the dumpster from that area and place it somewhere else.
Carl?
Yeah, that can be done. I mean, again, it's there for the tenants' use, so if the tenants are amenable to having it relocated and
The
they've
tenants
indicated
might
they
like to
are.
have a nice cleaner, it's a pretty nice area along there, but take the dumpsters out.
You can put it on the other side of the building.
The shared parking I wrote down, that was great, but will there a letter be attached, Jenny? How does that get recorded? Is it part of the special permit or?
No, it would not be part of the special permit. We would put it into the decision.
Great.
So, yeah.
So it's in the decision.
Yeah.
And then the intersection, I think you said something about,
The crosswalk?
yeah.
Yeah, we can't do that. Building inspector said that's
Is
not
there a
feasible.
crosswalk there?
No.
No.
There's one.
Oh, Park,
there's
yeah.
one at
Mass
Mass.
Ave.
Yeah.
Mass
Yeah.
Ave.
Lower Park
Oh,
Ave
okay, you gotta
extension.
come up
Yeah,
and come around.
right, yeah. There was up above. Yeah.
That's all I have.
Actually, if you improve the bike path access, people can go underneath and then up the stairs and avoid
Oh, that's
Park
right,
Ave
yeah.
extension altogether. So, Ken,
Just one question, the parking lot lighting. I went by there between this meeting and the last meeting, okay, so I forget what day now, I'm sorry.
Sure.
It wasn't quite really dark yet, but it wasn't light. And the lot looked very dark to me. Is there like missing lamps, or can we just add a few wall packs to the building?
There's a lot of wall packs. The one time is they maybe were off. I mean, I don't know if they were on or off. When they were on, it's a pretty strong lighting over there. It's not bad.
Okay.
There is extra wall packs. I think we did them. They go all the way on both sides of the building, actually.
So you're saying that the parking lot in general is pretty well lit and safe?
Well, the front is very well lit when the sign's on, and then if you go down the sides, there's wall packs on both sides all the way down the building.
I'm talking more of, see where the new facility is?
Yep.
Parking right along here. This part here, where the Gold Gym is,
Yeah,
I don't disagree with you.
the front part.
It's pretty well lit.
Yeah,
I'm talking back here where you count for all the extra parking back here.
yeah.
Can we maybe have some similar wall packs in that building? So
I think that, yeah, I don't know.
it didn't seem light to me. That's all.
Yeah,
Maybe
maybe
I'm not saying it isn't. Okay.
No.
I'm not saying that. Okay.
It would appear to be a simple fix, I mean, in
Yes,
terms of
I wasn't
putting
sure-
something in if we had to.
No,
I wasn't
know.
sure was the light lamp off or
It may be-
broken
They're
or.
all on timers, there's 2 or 3 timers throughout the facility that run them all, and some aren't on ours. Some are like on the auto bodies, like on that back side, on the left side where the bike path is, like on the auto body side.
So when they're closed, the lights are off.
No, they do have a timer that runs them, I'm not sure, there is lights all the way down the building. Whether they're on or off, I can't attest that, but people will complain, they don't like to walk back there in the dark.
Correct.
So they will complain to us, so whether they were on or off, I can't attest to it, but we do have lighting all the way down. They may have been off.
Can we stipulate something like
Yeah,
the similar lighting in the front area should be established in the back area? This area here is well lit.
the front, yeah.
Yes. I go down there, it's well lit, but then when
actually, the area up the right side of the building is pretty well lit too. It's
The
around back
riverside?
and left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right back here
Yeah.
is when I drove
You go
around
the
here.
Back and then around where the auto body shop is. It's
Right here?
on the right. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we can just add some similar lighting, just to light up the whole, it's safer for you guys too. I mean, just
Yeah,
you
that
know,
might be something we'd have to look into, like with, it's.
but if we can make that similar consideration
The
for
customers complain if it's, especially the women don't wanna walk in the dark, yeah.
so that's the only comment I have.
David.
Couple of questions. So, I'm just looking at the off-site parking proposal at Arlington Coal and Lumber, and it looks like the only paperwork around that is that one sentence letter from Mr. McNamara.
Yes.
So I just note that section 8.06 of the zoning bylaw states that off-site parking may be provided where it can be shown that a long-term agreement has been made to secure off-site parking. And
Joe has negotiated that with Arlington Coal. Joe, what has been your conversation with the principal of Arlington
With
Coal and
Bob?
Lumber?
For 25 years, they've let us use, and we give them free memberships. Their whole company has free memberships to use the facility, and he lets us use the park, and it's been like that for 25 years since we've opened.
Is there any documentation of
Just,
that?
we never had anything until I asked them to draft that letter, so it's been just a
Yeah.
verbal agreement, and
Yeah.
they have free memberships, there's about 6 guys that come over after work,
Okay.
which I think is about 4 o'clock, I think we actually have it at 4 o'clock they close, not 5.
And Jenny, has it been sufficient in the past to just have a letter like this as sufficient evidence?
This is the way we have done it in past cases.
I would.
We have talked about this being something we would like to address and change in the manner within which you've mentioned, which is recording a document. One suggestion I have, just to take up what you're talking about, is to amend the letter to talk about the long-term agreement, essentially having a sentence added by this property owner
And-
that outlines that as a way to address this, because there isn't, that would be
What would
something.
that be, Jenny?
This is a long-term arrangement,
Yeah.
or,
Yeah,
an
okay.
existing arrangement that will continue at.
Sure.
the way-
And
language you wanna
I
use.
understand that you've had this arrangement for a long time and so have a high degree of confidence that it will continue, but perhaps we can include as a condition that if that were to change, that they would have to come back before us.
Okay.
Well,
That's acceptable.
if I could interject, the board has the authority, what we're discussing really is a reduction of parking by 12 spaces. It's not a significant number. So the concern that I would have is that Arlington Coal and Lumber could change its position, and all we're dealing with still is just 12 parking spaces. The board could reduce the parking under its authority by 25%, which would give us that 12 spaces without the need for Arlington Coal and Lumber. And then when you factor in the uses on the site, because they're all operating at different peak times, the bylaw also allows the board to make it a finding that those off peak times are sufficient for purposes of reducing the parking. So I would be reluctant to just limit it to the Arlington Coal and Lumber parking situation.
I'm not following. Limit what?
Limit the reduction in parking by 12 spaces to Arlington.
We
Coal.
got
That's
pressured
not,
in a
that's
different
not what
way.
I was suggesting. That's one of the 3 aspects of the plan that's been put forward for managing parking. And so, because it also talks about the shared parking.
Right.
And the 25% reduction under different sections. But since that section for off-site parking is included in the plan, that's why I'm making the point that if that situation were to change, then that would change the conditions under which we'd be granting.
So
the
you would
reduction.
not be granting the permit based on the 25% reduction or the mixed use? You're gonna be granting it specifically on off-site parking?
Could it be part of the traffic management plan?
Well, that's what I'm getting at.
That is all encapsulated in the transportation
I
plan.
didn't see that. Oh, I'm sure I have that. I mean,
Well, there's-
I see both sides of it, but
I have less issues with the parking across the street, okay? And if, I see what you're getting at, if they mention it, it should be done right. So what I'm saying is, just strike it.
strike it from what?
From this application here, say they withdraw that portion of it and say that they're requesting approval on this based off of the 25% reduction and off-peak demand. And this way here, you're not relying on something that we can't rely on.
Well,
Then,
yeah, I have a thought about that. I disagree. Because
okay,
the town wants shared parking, okay? We've been talking about it for
Mhm.
about 15 years. It's a really good idea. The lights are off in a parking lot, it's not used by a bank. You park there and go to dinner, okay? We all do it. It's very helpful. These guys have come up with a great idea. It's not a great, it's been going on for however many years. In some way or form, it would be nice to put that in. You could put it in, we will endeavor to continue our relationship with Arlington Coal and Lumber, which allows shared parking. You don't, I see your point, you can't be sure that the new owner of Arlington Coal and Lumber is to happen. But that you put in language in some way, whether it's an attached letter, I don't know, that's why I asked Jenny. that will allow us to say, oh, well, this is really a consideration we made, but you're not legally bound, because that agreement could be subject to the ownership in the future.
Yeah, and again, the application requests an either or. It says, the board granted relief under either or of those three options. And I think if what I'm hearing you say, you would want a condition that we would continue, try to continue to maintain that for as long as possible, that's fine. But if you're gonna make it subject to that alone and then have us come back if Coal and Lumber decides that they can no longer use it, that's gonna be problematic, because I don't know what the zoning bylaw is gonna say 5 years from
Right,
now
that's right.
about reduction.
That's why I
But-
wanted to tie it,
Sold the
excuse me, to
business or
the
something crazy.
TMP or whatever it's called.
TDM.
TDM, thank you.
So their TDM plan includes the shared parking, the off-site parking, and the bike parking and encouragement of bicycling. That's the extent of the TDM plan. I guess I just want to be clear. Are you saying that with the shared parking alone, you can meet the required number of spaces?
Well, no, we need a 12 parking space reduction.
Mm-hmm.
And the board has the authority to give that 12 parking space reduction under either a 25% reduction period, if they find that the use is satisfactory in all other aspects, or B, because of the mixed use of the building and the shared parking does not have peak demands at the same time, the board can make a finding that the 12 space reduction is permitted, or C, because there's off-site parking available, that the 12 space reduction is permitted. My concern is if you limit it to the off-site parking, which is really not within our control, 5 years from now, for the sake of discussion, if Arlington Coal and Lumber says, we can no longer let you park here, and we have to come back before the board may no longer have the authority to grant the reduction. So this use becomes a non-use.
I understand your concern, but in order for us to grant the 25% reduction, we have to be confident that the required number of spaces, including the reduction, are going to be available, regardless of how you're planning to get there with your TDM plan.
Isn't the reduction of 12 spaces allowed?
Yes, that's what the board has the authority to grant that relief, basically saying,
Right.
we're not gonna require 133 spaces, we're gonna require.
Right, so what we've been in the habit of doing is asking for the traffic management.
TDM.
Thank you. In that TDM, if you put language in, I guess you already have, it says, we will endeavor to maintain shared parking arrangements, including a long-standing arrangement with Arlington Coal and Lumber. You're part of in other words, so it answers the question of a legal document saying.
It's not a mandate,
Yeah.
but it's a suggestion, and we would want to get that from Arlington Coal and Lumber. Yes,
Yeah.
makes sense.
And it's part of that document.
Right.
Which it is already, right? David?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we could come back and say, hey, you really haven't tried hard enough in the last 10 years to get shared parking, what have you done? I mean, for some recourse for us, there's the teeth there. Whereas you don't have to have the teeth of saying you actually have a hard and fast legal agreement with Arlington Coal and Lumber. I don't know, that's my question to the board.
Well, I think what it is, what we've asked for is we encourage people to show that
Right.
there are shared parking
Right.
arrangements. But I don't think what we would do as part of this approval is bind them
Right.
to that shared parking arrangement. We can't,
That's what
we
I'm-
can't do that without putting a cloud on it.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So,
But
we have seen it done.
Yeah.
we've seen it done, but I don't think it's gonna be good.
Yeah.
And I don't think they've taken into consideration street spaces in the area. I think there are 11 or 12 street spaces within the radius of Gold's Gym that satisfy the requirement, so.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm looking at a satellite map now, counting what I think is, I think it's 11 or 12 spaces within walkable distance of the front of the poles,
Oh, yeah.
so. Yeah, I think as long as the requirement is that we we can encourage them to continue shared parking arrangement. We can't require them to keep it up, because certainly that's at the consideration of the owner that's not here to be bound by that. But we can ask that they continue those relationships and those arrangements.
So, couple of other questions. I wasn't clear, you talked about the employees using the Arlington Colin lumber spaces, so is that?
No,
No,
no. I didn't mention that, certainly.
I thought somebody mentioned that.
No, it wasn't me.
I heard that too.
Something about 9 spaces,
Pardon me?
is that the one about the 9 spaces you said?
Well, but they're on the site.
Was that?
Yeah, the employee parking is on the site.
9 employee
Yeah,
parking spaces.
it's on the site.
Right.
I
Okay.
don't.
Yeah,
So it's
I
not
think
the
I
intention.
confused you because 9 on Arlington Coil Lumber, 9 on the site. I mentioned that, okay, but one has nothing to do with the other. The
Okay.
employee parking is all on the site.
Okay.
Understood.
Yep.
And the third thing was, I'd asked you the last time to consider not just providing the bike parking and encouraging people to bike or take transit, but whether there was any kind of an incentive program that you might be able to implement to actually, convince people to bike or take transit.
Yeah, if it comes down to financial considerations, here's a young man who's just starting out, okay, and I can't really in good conscience say to him, why don't you start offering a discount, okay, of some kind to people if they indicate they're going to ride a bike to and fro, okay? I just can't do that in good conscience, okay, because he's
To be
just,
quite honest, a lot of the kids, you're talking about 9, 10, 11-year-olds riding their bike
yeah,
in 10
Well, that
degree
we
weather in
might
the middle of
not
winter.
even That we might not even want.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you're really talking about. Because
But-
we're not busy in the summer. We're not busy.
Mhm.
Everyone's outside. You're talking in the middle of winter, and it's too cold. We do have there may be a few that want to, but we're going to encourage you. We're going to put it on the website. We're going
And
to.
everyone is going to get a copy of that memo that I prepared as well.
Yeah,
Everyone
and that was good.
attending both Gold's Gym and the baseball operation.
Mr. Watson, for Gold's Gym members currently a number of them currently do run and bike to the facility. Joe was just telling me that he has a number of members that will run to the gym, come down Mass Ave with a bike path, work out, and then continue
They
running back
run,
on.
they rollerblade, they'll come off the bike path, take their stuff off, do their weight training and do their cardio with a run back home. We had a kid today who came in, member, training for the marathon, ran Mass Ave, came in, showered, and went back to work. So I mean, that's another, thing that we get a lot of.
Yeah, and the bike parking is gonna be better.
Yeah,
So maybe more
we already
people
have the
bring-
indoor parking done, we took the tan beds out, and we have these rooms to put the bikes in, if people wanna bring them in the lobby, it's a full tile lobby. And they, cause some people have these $2,000-3,000 bikes, and we've always let them
Yeah.
bring them inside, cause they're just too expensive to leave outside.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Anything else?
That's
Jim?
it.
I don't have anything.
Okay. So I think we have recommended conditions and changes as amended to the report. Andy, you have something written up?
Oh,
Go
I
ahead.
have a quick question. You said you would move the dumpsters. I'm not quite clear where you are moving.
Carl,
them
where's
to.
the dumpster going to be moved to?
The specific location.
Pick which side you want
Yeah.
on, Joe.
Not
It's
along.
it's a landlord issue. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, it's
No, I
actually a
just need
tenant
to-
issue. I mean, it's gonna be up to Joe which side he wants,
I think it
wants
was,
on the building.
I think it was moved there to the plan. It has to be
I would just say not along the Millbrook buffer,
Move it away from.
To a location.
not within the Millbrook buffer, or alongside the creek.
So basically,
Put it on the other side.
located on the opposite side of Millbrook. The building on the opposite side.
Yeah,
Millbrook.
yeah, not on the outside of Millbrook.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no bridge over there at that location.
So
All right,
just put it-
Might be the way it seems back in.
yeah, that would be,
Like that, so the ones that I have.
oh, you want me to review?
Yeah.
everything?
would you?
Okay.
Yeah.
Maintain transportation demand management elements as follows. Provide and maintain bike parking and continue shared parking arrangement. I left it like that. Okay. Ensure exterior lighting around building will illuminates parking lot and is maintained and operable. Need to rework that, but think
Similar to existing lighting?
well, I said existing, actually,
On
ensure.
the front, not the,
Yeah.
we should say something about the front and the back, so just maintain lighting in the back is similar to the front, or some verbiage like that.
Maintain exterior.
Consistent.
Consistent, there you
Consistent.
go.
Lighting
Yeah.
in front and back of building. Ensures
I think we'll
operable
put them on a solar switch.
front and rear.
Yeah, that's a good
of
idea.
building.
Just
And ensure operable.
sync the timing up or
That's
so
what I
or
think,
whatever,
yeah,
and they'll take care of it all.
We'll just put it on a solar
Okay.
switch.
That was that one. Move dumpsters to a location not within the Millbrook buffer. I'm gonna leave it there. And then the last one is add fence posts to demarcate the bikeway access. Was there another one?
I would just add something like repair, or, I mean, just connect the chain link fence to the post.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I know, I
We
just wanna-
actually, we actually cut it, some of the brush was so overgrown, we actually went in there. We don't know where the land is in
Yeah, that
the
would be.
town, it's very, we don't
I was
wanna,
thinking that.
we had actually had a
We
contract.
can't acquire adverse possession against the town, so
Yeah.
it doesn't make any difference,
Fine.
okay?
We had Tom Cacavaro
Okay.
approach about re-beautifying that to you guys, and nobody knew what to tell him. So, I mean, we can definitely repair it, but, there's that fine line. But we'll fix the fence, that won't be an issue at all.
Repair existing chain link fence.
And fence posts
Add
demarcating,
fence posts.
demarcating the entrance.
Yeah.
Is there another one?
Nope,
No?
I
Okay,
think that's it.
I think that's it.
all right.
So I move to approve special permit docket number 2890 for 30 Park Avenue with the conditions as stated.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks.
That's a great idea.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Excellent.
Thank you, folks, appreciate
Is
it.
this yours?
So I'll close public hearing, the special permit docket 2890. Move on to the second item on our agenda, public hearing, special permit docket 3557 for 167A Massachusetts Ave. Come on up.
I'm the only one, unfortunately.
That's all right. Introduce yourself, tell us what you're looking for.
I'm Stuart from SRP Sign Company, Somerville, live in Arlington. Got a sign that we're proposing for 13 Forest Cafe. I'm not sure, actually, I haven't been, my project manager couldn't make it tonight, so I sort of picked this one up. But so I'm not sure why it needs a special permit, so maybe you guys can tell me. But maybe because it's lit, and there was not an illuminated sign there previously.
Because it's on
That's-
that.
it is
The
on-
sign
it's
on Mass Ave.
Massachusetts Avenue.
Okay,
That's what our mandate
here
was
we are.
back in the day.
Yeah.
We're here.
So it's, what is it, the 13 Forest Gallery?
We've done so many signs in Arlington. I don't think I've ever had to come to this board. We did Punjab. We've done.
So you're the sign menu.
I am the sign manufacturer. Unfortunately, the owner of the rest of the gallery couldn't be
So
here.
I'll explain. So,
Please.
so the reason is that when you're making any change to what was the existing sign, you have to come back here. Otherwise, usually if it's within keeping to whatever is there right now, and that was previously permitted or reviewed by my department, we can do an administrative review and approval with the inspection services office.
So if it was a lit
So that
sign
may
but
have
the
been-
business changed, you could administratively approve it, but
Correct.
considering that the sign materials are changing.
The other issue
Only if
here,
it was on Mass Ave or within our jurisdiction.
within our jurisdiction, of course, yeah. And then the other factor here is we're using community development block grant money to fix the storefront completely, so that also brought it additional attention,
Okay.
so.
So do you guys have drawings? Or are you only one set to pass around, huh?
You have one for me? Yeah.
You can look at mine, sure.
I have it on my computer, I don't want
Usually they make us
Everybody gets
11
an-
copies of these
an
things or
additional
something,
file.
I have it
so.
on my computer too.
There may be some other details that you want. I can answer any questions that you have.
There's also a memo,
What's this?
that's
Oh, I
their
look at it.
application, so the memo is from me, which was also attached.
I think it looks great. Okay, Andy?
I have no issues.
Pretty basic.
This is
Yeah.
beautiful sign.
Thank you.
Good.
It'll be, I think
Really
it'll look
nice.
terrific.
Nicely done.
Just perfectly placed.
Right across from my bakery, Cape Broad, that's where I go every day.
Tell these guys to lower it down and do it just like yours.
Well, I'm not sure that there, is the architecture the same right there? Let me
No,
check
I'm
that
just-
out.
I'm just
I
kidding.
wonder.
We can't do that.
I like
I
the
know
way
you can't, I just
the way
wonder
you
if it
placed
is.
it is just what
Thank
we
you.
want, 'cause
Yep,
you
I think it works with
integrity of the
what,
building.
it's the established sign being, definitely.
Looks great.
Are any of the other signs
Keep
lighted?
There are, no, I don't, this, well, certainly to the right of it, 2 stores over, is a Chinese place called Tiki Inn. That's definitely illuminated. And then the Bank of America's right there. It's the same block, same building, I'm not sure.
That Chinese one has the same kind of very obnoxious kind of light with the red.
Yeah, no, this sign will look
I've seen
good.
it,
This
yeah,
is a
yeah,
push-through stencil cut sign.
This is very nice.
Is it lit from behind?
It is, yeah. If you want to take a view at the section, I can show you, I can explain it to you, whichever you prefer, or both. So it's, yes, it is lit. Only the white letters will light. So the face is aluminum, and then we cut the letters out on a CNC machine, and we make the same letters out of acrylic, and we literally push them through the face. You see the little flames on the back?
Where's the light?
Right there.
Oh, it's pushed through this way,
No, this is the light inside this cabinet.
right, and then push
And-
through.
Well, it sort of pushes through this way and stopped by that flange. So only that acrylic is illuminated.
Yeah, but when you cut it,
Well, we cut it out. It's gone. Throw it away.
push through dental cut.
No. Yeah. No.
I thought
That would be a
that's what you-
fret cut. Maybe what you're thinking.
That's what I said, fret cut.
Oh yeah, that's what I thought. I said. Yeah. Added a syllable in there. I didn't. Yeah.
It's really nice, it's elegant.
Thank you. We do a lot of these. I'm gonna take that one back unless you want.
Please do.
Now, are you guys? What happens from here? Just a building permit?
I'm going to motion to approve it.
Oh.
Yeah.
You approve it.
We have a motion for a second.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Close.
So what
Yeah.
happens next
Yes.
is there's a 20-day appeal period.
Really?
And then you can go up, depending upon if there's not any appeals, then you can proceed with a
Building permit.
building permit.
That's it. All right. So do we get a letter from here? Will I?
The owner should follow up with my office for the next steps. Okay,
So we'll,
so
okay.
Mark,
We'll have
have
Mark
Mark
call
get
you.
in touch.
All right. Very good. I
All right.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So long.
Thank you.
guys.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Good work. Ahead of time.
Can I ask you one question, Zoe?
Sure.
Fret cut.
They don't have to wait 20 days. They can do that at their risk.
Well,
Is that right?
I try not to, that's,
Technically, you can take the risk to go ahead.
You
Sure,
can take the
you
risk,
can
but you
risk.
could be shut down.
but it's
Yes.
also, it's a town-funded project.
Oh, it's town? Oh, okay.
Yeah, community development project,
Never
which are
mind.
being used.
Oh,
Retracting that?
Hmm?
You retracting that?
No, I'm just
Just curious.
Question.
Do it at my
Yes.
risk. I could counsel the owner that they could put the signs up at their risk.
We didn't say that.
We're funding this. The answer is no.
Don't do that.
All right, moving on.
Okay,
No more questions
great.
about.
Lovely. Can you?
I'm in trouble. I've done it many times on my own projects.
All right. Let's not advise anyone to do anything that's going to get them in trouble.
Yes.
That will be in the paper.
Be in trouble, yeah. All right, so item number 3 is our report to town meeting regarding recodification, zoning bylaw amendment. So Jenny, can you walk us through what you've given us this evening? For this evening.
Everybody's got a copy. I have one extra copy here, which is just a printout from the packet. Does anybody need it? No?
I have
Okay.
it.
So the report to town meeting is essentially a summary of the overall, what we're trying to do with the warrant article, outlines the background of the project, talks about the process, the timeline, and the project team, and then outlines public comments, including how we've been responsive and what are 2 particular matters that have been raised throughout the process that is discussed in greater detail in the document. One being what constitutes a substantive policy issue, and should the administrative rules and processes outlined in the bylaw be moved to board rules. And then a conclusion and a vote. I handed out separately this evening a suggestion in terms of an amendment to this vote, which would address some mostly typographical issues that we've gone back and identified in the bylaw, that are things where either wording was not what we meant it to be, a citation is not what it should be, or a row in a table was not where it was supposed to be. And I can walk through those amendments. That's a separate handout that everybody got. And then paired with that, just so you have the background information, is a document that went through the Citizens Guide comments, which was in a sort of table format. I took that table and I turned it into this document, which allows us to then have each concern addressed and a response to each one of those concerns. There were 5 such concerns that we are responding to, and then subsequently think that we should put them into this amendment to the report and your vote. The other, I think, 3 are additional ones that we subsequently identified on our own. So, do you have any questions for me? And David, of course, as a member of the recodification working group, should feel free to continue this, and there's 2 other members in the participating, Steve Revelak and Christian Klein.
So, I don't want to go first.
No? But
It's just I'd like to thank Steve Revelak for this latest missive that we got the other day. And I agree with Steve, and I don't think the one recommended change that he had, which was fixing the missed section number, is in this.
It's not, no,
So
I
we
need to just
be-
write
It just
the,
needs to be added to that.
yeah, so
I
once
think.
I'll put that in, so I don't
Okay.
need to, yeah, the concern number 1, which is again, a section citation needs to be a different section, would be part of your amendment
Okay.
to your original motion.
And the other 2 are no action, right?
Yeah, I agree with Steve.
Yeah, I agree with Steve on that.
So I just want to mention a couple of things. First, we have had now 3 out of the 4 scheduled neighborhood meetings, and a couple of them have been pretty well attended, and the last one is this Wednesday. There have been a number of comments and questions that have been made during those meetings that we've considered as part of this latest process. Also, the original citizens version of the guide was, I don't know, something like 120 pages. It was very, very lengthy. More recently, after the initial discussions with that group and responses to many of their concerns, they issued a revised version that was down to, I think, 31 pages, and I believe that was the basis for the document that Jenny has provided us with, where we actually went through all of those remaining concerns point by point and were able to give a specific response to each concern, whether or not that response was to propose a change to our original motion.
So, let's take concern number 1, where it says response can add back in not required under MGL Chapter 48. Are we gonna add that back in or not? Because that sort of doesn't say, where it says can add back in. Do we actually add it back in or not add it back in?
I mean, I think I interpret that to mean we're not required. It's not required to be there, but if town meeting really wants it to be there, we can put it back in.
So maybe that should say that a little more like you said it, right? We wouldn't object to it
We wouldn't object to it being added
being
in.
added in,
but we're
we
not
think it
suggesting it.
as unnecessary.
two is a lot clearer.
Pardon me?
Number 2 is a lot clearer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I haven't had a chance to go through this with a fine tooth comb, because we just got it, but that just jumped out at me because it was on the front page.
Half language, it's fragment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't think this is something we necessarily would vote on tonight. I think we can trust staff to edit and tighten up without having to come back in front of us.
Mhm.
I do have a suggestion, I'm not sure if this makes any sense, but this is going to be the report to special town meeting. And if you're a town meeting member, you're gonna probably start at the beginning. And it takes you a long time through the summary and the background and the process, timeline, project team to really get to what's going on. I just wondered if, thinking like, you're reading something in the newspaper, you're gonna have an opening paragraph that gives you a highlight before we get to the summary, like, I'm not sure exactly what it would say, but like, the purpose of this is to recodify the existing bylaw to make it easier to read, understand, follow. It was not intended and does not make any substantive changes, except, where necessary by state law or court decision, and the intention to move out the administrative pieces. I would just put something like that up front, just so, if a town meeting member reads just the first page, they're gonna get the real essence.
It sounds like the warrant.
Well, right, but I think that the town meeting members are gonna get this report, right,
So you can
on the day of.
put that in there. It's similar to the warrant language.
Right, yeah, at top. So if they start reading it, they get the headline at the top of the page. That would be my suggestion.
Okay.
And, people can disagree, and we haven't tried it, so we don't know what it would look like.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I've talked to several town meeting members, and they just said, can you just give me a quick synopsis of what this is about?
And I had the same
And then-
conversation with town meeting members, and when I told them, I said, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Now I understand.
Then you say, we can get into the minutia of all the different things, but
And then even say, if this is approved by town meeting, we will then start working on making substantive changes. So that would be like the head. The only other suggestion I have, and I know this is nitpicking, and I'm sorry for that, but on page 6, in the second sentence, can you change Gene Benson to Eugene Benson?
That's totally reasonable. Second line.
Second line on page 6, where it says Gene Benson made the motion.
Oh,
If you can make that Eugene Benson.
of course,
Thank you.
got it. Your name is Eugene on the cover page, though?
Yes.
Okay, got it, just making sure. So I'll add like a 2-sentence thesis statement to
Perfect.
the abstract. This is due tomorrow. I have to print this all tomorrow and mail it to all town meeting members, just to be clear. So I'll have to do that independently.
Yep, got it.
So, a couple of follow-ups to Jean's concern. We did at one time, maybe back in July, or even earlier, have like a 2-page or 1 or 2-page summary of what this was all about. Do we have an up-to-date, like 1 or 2-pager like that?
Yeah, the
And
FAQ sheet.
so is that something we could also provide to the town meeting members? Because I think, a lot, the people who have had the very detailed questions and concerns, if they bring them up again, we'll respond to those at town meeting, and then we've got this much more detailed response to the citizens group concerns that presumably people will also have access to. But I think that summary would be appropriate to give to the town meeting members along with the report.
good idea.
Yeah, I agree. Does anyone have any changes, edits, suggestions, other than
I have
Go
one
ahead.
very small typo.
Hmm.
What are you
Uh,
looking
in
the
the
recommended amendment?
the amendment.
Oh,
But
in the
the
amendment.
lot width at the bottom of page 2, the actual strikeout should include the slash.
No.
It is included in the text of the amendment, but not in the strikeout itself.
Oh, gotcha. Divided by 0.
Good eyeball.
Okay.
And how are we going to make this available?
How would you like to?
I would definitely like to make it available online with the rest of the materials. I'd also, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to send it directly to the individuals who made those comments in the
Right.
first place.
Which I haven't done yet,
Okay.
but I will.
Yeah, having it online, I think, is a good idea. We
Mhm.
can direct people to it.
Are we voting on this amendment today, or?
Yes.
Yeah. So it
The
will be
report.
included with the report, but it'll part of our report to special town meeting.
And, I do want to point out to the other members, at the bottom of page 1, the amendment with where you see accessory structures and minor accessory buildings in red. I just want to make it clear, those lines were not missing. They're not being added in. What we are doing is reversing the order of them. Minor accessory buildings was first and accessory structures was second before, and that was actually inconsistent with the similar uses in all of the other residential zones that come below it in the table. And there were also some Scrivener's errors with the less than or equal symbol and with the actual values in the other columns. And so those are being corrected. But those lines did exist in the current draft.
So, so we need someone to make a motion to approve as amended and authorize the director to.
Sorry, quick, so are these additional amendments going into it?
No, those are, that is just a, like
That's
a,
informational.
So there are no other amendments that are gonna be added to
the
this?
one other amendment is the one from a letter to you from Steve.
Yeah, I saw
The
that. But how
the
does that
first item.
relate to this vote we're about to take?
You'll have to say, include this in that vote. So, and,
So
striking,
concern number 1.
yeah. So, and, it would be, and, I'll write it, I'll type it right now, actually. Makes a lot of sense. And, nine. Sorry, I need this. And, amend section 5.7.3 A. To read.
That's just changing the reference to section 5.8 to section 5.7.
Yeah,
It's a typo, so instead of 5.8,
Mhm.
it's 5.7,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'll type it all out later, but, to read all of this section, basically this whole piece of this section 5.8.
Well, it's just changing the reference, right?
Yeah, this section 5.7.
So changing one character
Five
in
point-
that
yeah.
paragraph.
That is correct, yes. One number.
Can I just say so moved?
I would just quickly suggest before you
See
want.
what's being moved.
Okay.
Well, I was going to say that there might be other things that you want to, while you keep this topic going. There were other things that were raised during the public meetings and one of the members of the public is here who might want to discuss that with you, I think.
Okay.
Two members, sorry.
Yes,
All right.
thank
Hi.
you, Mr. Young. Mark and Sophie Miazzo from 175 Pleasant Street, Precinct 8. We had suggested that, I don't know what materials you have in front of you, but we had suggested the language in 5.3.13, B1, regarding accessory structures and the setbacks applicable to such structures. I think that was something that Mr. Watson had mentioned a moment ago in terms of reordering or something. There was language about, new language about such accessory structures could be exempt if they meet certain dimensional requirements from front, rear, and side setbacks. It seemed to us that the inclusion of the word front setbacks in the carve out was undesirable. And we've separately raised this to various town meeting members in Precinct 8 and received broad support for the submission of amendment, which has been submitted to the town moderator and to town legal council.
Yeah.
A motion to amend this language to strike out the word front, meaning that all accessory buildings, regardless of their dimensions, would be subject to the front setback rules that are applicable to principal structures. We'd suggest that the board consider removing this from their suggestion in order to simplify the town meeting and to remove something I think has broad public support. I'd be happy to answer specific questions. I'm not sure I've made it clear for everyone who's encountering this for the first time. I know some members on the board have heard us speak about this before, so they're sort of acutely aware of what we're suggesting.
I have two questions.
Yes, of course.
When you say we, who are you representing when you say we?
Mark and Sophie Miazzo, when I say we, myself and my
Oh,
spouse.
you too.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not a group or someone.
No, we're not part of a group. We've
Okay.
we've read the full proposal as of December that was provided in red line form. I think it looks terrific, broadly supportive. We thank the board for what looks like a tremendous amount of work in getting the proposal in terrific shape. So thank you to all of you for your work. We just had one small change that we want to suggest. It's this one change.
Then the second question is:
Yes.
did the original say front, or it was something that was added in this recodification process?
Would you like to respond to that?
Well,
I'm also
I'd be happy
glad
to, but-
fill in here.
yeah, the working group went back and looked at this specific issue in detail.
Mhm.
And it's our belief that, that the reference to front is in the existing bylaw and has been translated into the new format appropriately.
We haven't seen the word front appear in the existing bylaw. Could you, is that in 618 or somewhere else?
Page 72.
I believe that it was in 618. I
Yes,
have to,
oh, it
yeah,
says
right?
617.
No, 618.
Oh, okay.
I'm just bringing it up because
It's a fair question.
I want to be clear that we're not making
Yeah,
substantive
I know,
changes.
that's
We're just, and if this
Talking about
becomes
accessory
one, then
buildings.
Oh, down there.
Yeah,
I don't mind addressing this in the second half
right.
of this. And I think it's a good point, but I don't
Yep.
know.
I understand the concern. I didn't think the words front, side, or rear, any of them had appeared in the existing bylaw. I might be mistaken.
So in the table, it's front. I'll pass that out if you like.
I've got
It's
mine.
6.18 in the existing zoning bylaw. So what the groups talked about, we did look at it. We understand the concern. I received the two amendments by two different town meeting members with regard to this, exactly the language that you're asking to be struck,
Right.
which is just the one time that it says front, not in the introduction, but in that subsection, which I think is B.
Yes, B1, or it was B1 before the reordering. I understand there might be a reordering.
But we felt that potentially this is the kind of thing that we would want to go back to, that this could constitute something more policy oriented, that it's not that our reading of the bylaw and the way that it's being used, the existing bylaw is such that it is written the way that we are suggesting it be written in the proposed bylaw. That, I'm just giving you
Right.
the framework of that
No, that's
conversation.
helpful. That's helpful. And just for clarity, does the word front appear somewhere in the bylaws in respect to the accessory building setback or not?
It's right in the table.
Just in the table.
Right in the table, yeah. And also in the definition of the first sentence, in the paragraph of an accessory building attached to, et cetera.
If I could respond to that after.
Yeah,
Mr. Benoit.
I think.
Actually, I was going to allow Mr. Revelak to respond.
I can,
Enlighten us a little bit further.
may I read the bylaw? And so 618 starts off, in our districts, a detached accessory building or structure shall conform to the provisions set forth in the following schedule. So, and the following schedule is a 3-column table, where the first column is labeled district. The second column is distance from front lot line in feet, distance from rear lot line in feet. This is followed by a statement that privately detached garages need not conform to side yard or rear yard setbacks, but shall be governed by the following table. There's a table about garages. Then the relevant, what we thought was the relevant text. An accessory building attached to the principal building shall be considered as an integral part thereof and shall be subject to front, side, and rear yard requirements applicable to the building. In our district, an accessory building such as a doghouse or tool shed shall be exempt from the preceding dimensional regulations. If said building dimensions result in a floor area not more than 80 square feet and a building height of not more than 7 feet.
I guess the preceding, so I think there's an interpretation question of what does the preceding the phrase
Preceding
dimensional requirements, what is that referring to in the context of
Yeah.
the phrase, which perhaps is clear, perhaps isn't. I personally haven't found it entirely clear and certainly not as unambiguous as the proposed language, which would allow the construction of a 7-foot structure anywhere on a residential lot, including against the sidewalk on the front lot line. It's been my observation, and there might be exceptions, but I haven't noticed them throughout the precincts where I live and throughout town. I think it's generally the rule that 7-foot structures built on people's front lawns doesn't exist. And if it's the board's intent and purpose to maintain the status quo in town until such time as another working group has the ability to consider policy changes, I would think it would be appropriate to continue prohibiting, or at least to impede the construction of structures which don't currently exist in our town, regardless of a potential quibble about what the ambiguous language of the current bylaws may or may not permit. So I think, having polled again, not just two of the members that have submitted the amendment, but many others, some of whom will be present in the meeting and have declined to submit the amendment on behalf, whatever, but, are broadly supportive of it. I'd strongly suggest that, we take an action to protect our streetscapes and to prohibit the construction of 7-foot ancillary buildings in people's front yards until the policy considerations for and against permitting such structures be fully aired in due course.
So my question is, do we know whether that's ever been interpreted to allow an accessory structure to avoid the front line setback?
I do not know. I don't believe it has been interpreted that way, but.
I mean, I understand the concern, and I mean, if I'm open to being convinced that the way you guys are interpreting this is the correct interpretation. It's just that looking at the language of this, regardless of what you think the preceding dimensional regulations might be, all of the preceding dimensional statements in this section say include the front yard. And I don't know what else to say about that. I mean, I agree with you that would be that we don't want sheds in the front yard, but that's, I believe, how we interpreted it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Christian Klein, Newport Street, town meeting member, precinct 10. This also allows you to build a small playhouse for your children to be installed in the front yard, and I can point out at least 2 on Highland Ave, I think, that are there. Whether they're technically the front or the side, they're still on the street because of their corner position. But I think that that's another sort of situation where there's a house off of Wildwood that has a sort of a faux, what do you call it, like water well sort of structure in their front yard. I think those are allowed under this provision, and I don't think that I agree that this provision is wacky, but it does allow certain things that are things that we do want to not discourage necessarily.
So our feeling was, based on our interpretation of this section, that the current wording in the recodification reflects the existing bylaw, but that this was a valid and even desirable topic for future discussion when we get to the substantive phase of zoning work.
If I may respond, I mean, I understand there can be an open debate about whether the open language permits it or not, and I acknowledge readily that there may very well be certain types of structures that we would want to permit or possibly permit in front yards, children's play structures being among them. I think they're fairly rare. I haven't come across. I'll accept your evidence that they do exist in some places in town. I noted in the proposal or some of the materials that have been circulated to town meeting members that while there's a second phase of this process that's intended, I think the current bylaw is still intended to apply for, in the words of the material, was it a couple of years or something before the second phase is, do you remember? I think it's expected that there'll be quite a long gap between the second phase when more robust changes could be proposed and adopted, and this seems like a particularly egregious loophole. I think there are certainly, variance process for the time being as a stopgap measure to permit people to have valid front yard structures that nobody's going to object to still put those in place while generally protecting the home value of neighbors in the residential districts who generally would not like a 40-foot long structure built in their front yard, to raise an extreme example, but one which is technically permitted under the wording that the board has previously proposed.
So I just think, I don't disagree with you, but given what the scope of this phase of the recodification is supposed to be limited to, our perspective is that is the type of policy consideration which is beyond our scope for this phase. So, you know, you're of course totally free to raise it, but with the understanding that it's perhaps the type of policy change that we were explicitly not going to make in this phase of the process.
Yeah, last little comment on the subject. I guess I also admit I haven't gone back to the record of how that amendment, and I'm not sure which of the years that's referenced in the bylaws that particular amendment passed. I haven't gone back to check the ancillary materials around the amendment to try and get a sense of what was intended and wasn't intended. It would strike me as somewhat surprising that they actually intended for all sorts of 7-foot tall structures to be built in people's front yards. It just strikes me as much as we read the language and it seems like there might be a plausible reading that says that's what's permitted under the current bylaw. It strikes me as unlikely that the previous proponents of this amendment to the bylaws actually intended that in all of the breadth that we're giving it. But maybe they did. I think in this, I guess we were speaking tonight in the hope, being broadly supportive of the amendment that you're proposing and hoping it'll carry before the town meeting next week. I guess we were hoping to take this issue off the table and to simplify the future meeting by having the board take a chance of having a chance to sort of adopt this change, and which seems to be a fairly desirable change in pretty much everyone's opinion here tonight. But of course that's a judgment call that's entirely in your hands. So thank you for your attention to the matter.
Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, David, the language in the new one says a minor accessory building.
It doesn't exist in the existing zoning bylaw. Minor is under 80 square feet.
But in this one it just says, in the current it just says, such as a doghouse, tool shed. I don't know if that changes anything. It's a new word.
I don't think so. We were attempting to, there is a new definition that, whereas these are just examples that were inserted.
So the definition of minor accessory building
includes things like doghouses and tool sheds.
And shed is also defined.
Mm-hmm. You know, I do think there's an issue here. But I think we would be exceeding the scope of the recodification that we have talked about a lot and insisted that we were being careful not to make policy changes if we were to adopt this, regardless of how we feel about the validity of the proposal. I just think it's unfortunately not the right time to make this change.
I think I'd agree with that.
Is it safe to assume that this will come up as an amendment on the floor of town meeting?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. It's already been two motions have been submitted and accepted.
Oh.
Yeah. Accepted as that in that they will go to town meeting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Still not accepted by town meeting, but
So you wouldn't, I don't think you necessarily get any objection from me as a town meeting member, but you know, I don't think it would be appropriate for the ARB to support it given the scope of the recodification process.
Would it be in the spirit of something that was mentioned earlier as not being supported but not being opposed? I can't remember the subject, but I think the board took a similar position on another subject. But I suppose in the alternative, would the board want to take that position with respect to this amendment?
I think what we could say is we believe this does make a substantive change, which is outside the scope of the recodification, but we're expressing no opinion about whether it's a good or bad substantive change. Because as we just pointed out, while most of the time we wouldn't want those structures up against the front lot line, there may be some structures that would be okay. So that's why I think what we can say is we don't think it's within the scope. We think it changes it, but we don't express an opinion as to whether it's good or bad policy.
I mean, it's the sort of thing that I would suggest referring to the residential study group for more in-depth consideration, so that rather than just removing it wholesale from the zoning bylaw, they can consider whether they need to take a more nuanced approach and whether there are cases, such as some of the ones that Christian suggested, where it may actually be appropriate to have such structures.
I think that's a tactic I'd be very supportive of, sitting on that group. I think that would be something that would get a lot of discussion and research by that group.
I also would, since if this is so new to us, we haven't had a chance to actually get into it, I would want the opinion of the building commissioner and see what he thinks about this and what he's been doing to enforce or not enforce what we're talking about here. And I'd also like to talk to town council on his interpretation of what's written and what's written now. Just, you know, we spent months going through this whole thing here, and I just don't want to rush through this right now. I wholeheartedly agree with you in what you say, but I don't want to be in a rush to make a change that would actually have all the reverberations that may not be intentional. And so I just want to do a little more looking into. I'm not saying no, but I'm not saying yes. I guess that's my opinion.
I think that's our decision. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Raise a good point.
And do you have any other, or are we good
There
at
are
motions?
No, that was the only other thing
So I
that
think-
I'm aware of. There are other people here, but I don't know if they have things to say.
Okay. Well, can you go back to where we had left it as far as proposed motion?
So this is your proposed motion, the way it's outlined right here. Voted to amend the recommended vote of the Arlington Redevelopment Board under Article 2 of the special town meeting and in this case it would be it actually says it already says in 9 parts, but it actually only notes 8 in here. The ninth one is the one that we talked about, which is
So that's from Steve.
Section
Which is
5.7.3A,
Okay.
changing the section reference.
yes. But this is your vote.
Okay.
And
Do you want to add the one about crossing off that little slash?
Well, I would just simply,
That's-
that's me just
That's, we could just say.
changing the
yeah,
red
Okay.
as
and
Fair
the
enough.
strike through.
I didn't want to just not. So motion?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Good.
So then the report.
Okay, so we need to move.
This will be put into the report to town meeting, but
Okay,
just
so we
need
need
to-
to move to approve the report
Together.
and submit it to town meeting
With the amendments we
as amended.
suggested.
So move, a motion to approve the report to special town meeting as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
This is ordinance Bruce.
Hmm?
This is ordinance Bruce Simmons.
Yeah, right.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate your report. The last, is there anything else on that?
not from me, but if anybody has a question about special town meeting, this is a good time.
Are we meeting here before, prior
Yes,
to?
we'll have 7:30, and then we'll adjourn to town
Adjourn,
meeting.
Is there something on for that 7:30 meeting on the docket?
Not yet. I have things.
All right. I didn't get a chance to look at the minutes.
We're not there yet. One more. So one of the things that's been discussed as we've gone through this process of recodification is taking the administrative rules out of the zoning bylaw where they're not really appropriate and putting them back to control boards and committees. So what David actually brought up to me is that he thought it would be a good measure to approve the set of rules and regulations for the ARB that are existing zoning bylaw to use to govern the actions of this board, so that there is a specific set of rules and regulations in place, hoping that recodification is approved next Monday night. So I thought as a show toward town meeting of good faith and goodwill that we're continuing to operate as they've approved us in the existing zoning bylaw. We take what's in there, we adopt that as our board and administrative rules. Nothing's changed, just pulling out the text from the existing zoning bylaw, adopting it as the rules and regulations that govern the ARB. So what I would do, I think we provided a copy of that, but what I would do is I would just ask for a vote to adopt these as the policies, procedures, rules and regulations of the Arlington Redevelopment Board. Certainly have a discussion about that before we do anything.
So these include not only the ARB, but also the zoning board of appeals, right?
The zoning board of appeals voted last week to adopt the rules as they currently stand in the zoning bylaws, the rules and regulations, until such time as we enact our own.
So we're basically doing.
So it'd be at the
We do
parallel.
the same thing. Yeah.
Got it.
So we adopting this until we make any modifications.
So we will in the future be able to make modifications. We've had preliminary discussions about that, things that we'd like to see to streamline things. But this would be a move so that there is something in place if and when the new recodified zoning bylaw is adopted.
Because it's not part of the.
Because it's not part of
It's
not part
removed
of the
from the
draft.
zoning bylaw.
So, well, it's proposed to be removed.
Right.
And to reduce the concerns that anyone might have, that as a result of that, there would be no existing administrative rules and regulations governing our operations. We were proactively adopting the existing rules and regulations so that without change, so that there's no potential for a gap in the rules governing us.
Right.
I think that's an excellent idea. My other question is, are there any references in this to the current zoning bylaw that will be out of date if the new one is adopted?
Internal references, you mean?
Yeah, so
I
for
don't know what
example,
reference you mean.
if you look at the very last thing, in lieu of the required submittals listed above, an application for a special permit under use 8.24 of section 5.04, are those sections current, but they won't be the right numbers?
Well, there are no numbered uses anymore, so I guess that
it
answers the
doesn't,
question.
it doesn't really, it would not exist.
So we
in
would
that
need
way.
to change that.
So the first thing we would do if they're adopted by town meeting was we have to rush in and change the references.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yep.
That's right.
Okay.
But now that we have a nice handy guide to do that, we know what's where and what's what. So,
I might suggest that we go back to the previous agenda item and perhaps amend the report to town meeting. I have a paragraph where I'm gonna make a suggestion, and this relates to however you decide to adopt these rules. It's the paragraph on page 5 that says, additionally, the proposed zoning bylaw does not contain administrative rules and processes. And the next sentence would be, do you got this?
So assuming we adopt these,
Yeah,
we
this
would want to
content.
report to town meeting that we have adopted them.
Yeah, this
Adopted
content
those.
is proposed to be moved to zoning board of appeals and ARB rules, etc. Then I was going to add a last sentence. At the February 5th redevelopment board meeting, the board voted to adopt, and then I can put it here, and then whatever action you would like to take
Mhm.
preceding this process.
Yeah.
Right?
Should you also mention the ZBA also adopted them in the same?
I can.
Yes, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Appreciate that.
Zoning board of appeals.
And that pretty much covers it because
Also
we're the only two
Right.
boards affected.
Mhm.
Last
Whatever,
Tuesday's
last
meeting.
Tuesday, yeah. So I can't remember if that's the 30th or the 31st. I can't remember.
29th, 30th, 29th.
Tuesday?
Tuesday. Forgot my phone at home.
Tuesday was the 30th
Mhm.
of January.
Okay.
What is it saying there?
Where am I? Page 5.
Page 5, the last paragraph.
Page 5.
That was the 30th, Jenny.
30th. So
That's
at,
right.
this is actually.
Oh, so we're talking- Okay.
It's the next to last paragraph on page 5.
Yeah.
Next to last, okay.
Here it is, this one.
I think that's a good addition.
So I just need the
Yeah.
language.
Mhm.
At the February 5th redevelopment board meeting, the board voted to adopt their rules as, sorry, and I didn't finish the sentence. Voted to adopt rules, their rules.
Voted to adopt administrative rules
As stated in the.
as contained in the existing zoning bylaw.
And
Say
then,
the ZBA did the
zoning-
same on
Yeah.
January 30.
Yeah. All in favor of that change? We need a motion.
want to go back and amend the motion altogether.
Can I just say so motion again?
We can move to amend the motion and revote as amended.
So move to amend our report
Move to amend the
To-
report to town meeting.
to town meeting as discussed relating to administrative rules.
Yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So then we would move to adopt
The rules.
the rules as presented.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Good. All right, anything else on that, Jen?
I don't think so.
Okay. So moving on to the last item is minutes from January 8th, which was the first public hearing. I didn't get a chance to get into these, and I'm sure there's gonna be some changes. Is there any issue with tabling this until Monday night?
We have to,
We have to have
we
them
have
for
to,
town meeting.
or I have to just post them as draft, but I
I-
would prefer to have them finalized.
Do you have a copy of it? I
Um,
haven't had a chance to apologize for that, but there was just, the other thing was just too long.
Yeah.
oh, my packet. Okay, sorry,
All right.
1 second. Are there copies on that table over there by any chance? I know there were copies of an
Just the
agenda.
agenda.
I can pull it up here, I think.
Yeah,
It just says, no, this says
That's
here.
the agenda. Actually,
minutes are not in this packet, they're not processed this fall. So maybe that's the end of my document.
Yeah, that's
That's
it,
the
yeah,
end.
yeah.
Okay.
the only issue I see is Michael Ruderman's first name is misspelled.
architectural problem.
I noticed that too.
Oh.
I didn't catch that. I didn't see anything on there.
I don't see anything else I object to, so
I actually don't have them. Is that the only amendment?
I think that's all I can find. Quick reading. I think it does, I think it pretty well captures each speaker's objection, so.
Objections, concerns.
Concerns.
So I move to accept the minutes of the meeting of January 8, 2018, with one amendment, correctly spelling Michael Runeman's first name.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any other business?
No other
Concerns?
business, no.
All right.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.